everybody, and welcome back to Author Eke. Today we have Michael Hearns. I'm going to let him introduce himself, and then we're going to talk about his books and his writing style and what kind of motivates him and whatever else kind of tickles our fancy. So go ahead, Michael, and welcome to Author Eke.
Thanks, Travis. So glad to be here. Thank you for having me. My name is Michael Hearns, born and raised in Miami, Florida, and did 27 years as a South Florida police officer and detective. 10 of those years undercover in the Medellin and Cali drug cartels. I have
Oh, wow.
a wide range of experience behind me, but post-retirement, I started working in film and TV as a technical advisor and saw the way things were being done. And a lot of people kept asking me about writing a book. And I think they all wanted me to write a tell-all. I really
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to do that. So I started to write a fictional character named Cade Taylor. And I actually thought it'd be one and done. But there was such a hue and cry for more Cade Taylor that we're now into our fourth book. So we have 4 novels in the series. And that's where I am right now.
Excellent, excellent. So I want to let everybody know that yes, there are people that were actually born in Miami that still live there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Actually, I was
it's
one of the major hospitals in Miami. I was one of the first kids born in that hospital back in the early 1960s. So yeah,
it's like finding a unicorn.
it
I
is.
mean,
Yeah. I got that a lot when I was a younger man, and then I didn't think too much of it. But now that I'm older, to hear someone who's actually a natural native Miamian, a true 305er, as they
yeah,
call them. Yeah.
yeah,
Few and far.
excellent, excellent, excellent. So your books aren't a tell-all, but do they have snippets of actual case things? And do you have to get your books approved or vetted through the Miami Police Department or the DEA or FBI, whoever you might have worked with at that time?
No, I don't have to do any of that. I was kind of an outlier lone wolf to begin with back in the day, so that's really not going to work now that they have zero constraints over me. The
Okay.
books are like everything, like most authors. The books are a conglomeration of you write what you know.
Mm-hmm.
I really wanted to try and bring an element to the readers that you don't normally see in law enforcement. And what we did in my capacity back when I was working was kind of covert and
Mm-hmm.
off the radar. So readers actually have a back channel view of that kind of a lifestyle. So, in answer
Yeah.
to your question, is it a combination of life and art coming together? I would say yes. I
Mm-hmm.
often defer to the whole Robin Masters Magnum PI thing that you just have to kind of figure out how much of Cade Taylor is me and how much of Cade Taylor is fiction.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Exactly. That's such a great series too. I
Oh,
mean,
wasn't it?
Magnum
Yeah.
PI. I mean, come
Wow.
on. I mean, that's
A
amazing.
classic.
Yeah.
Classic.
So you sit down and write, or you say, okay, I've got to do certain things today. Or I have a schedule. I know when the book one, I want to get it done. I have the backward plan. What kind of is your writing style?
It's a combination of all of that.
Mm-hmm.
My wife, sometimes I'll say to her, she'll say, "What are you doing today?" I say, "I have to write." And she'll say, "Well, why are you telling me this?" And I say, "Because if I don't tell you, I won't do it. So I have to make that announcement
Yeah.
so that I'll do it." I oftentimes have a 8 or 9 month calendar in my head of where I want to be. And
Mm-hmm.
some days, like a house on fire, and some days it's really not coming too well. But I do churn and burn my way through it, and we end up getting the first draft done and the manuscript done, and then the editor and I start to pour it over.
Right. I'm pretty much the same. I try to do 6 to 9 months to get the final product out. However long to write it, and like I've just finished my third book, which is a historical fiction, different than the thriller suspense that I've written. I just finished it, but now you're going through the edits. Now you're going back through again. You're going back through again, and eventually you're gonna say, "Okay, I'm done. Yeah, I'm ready to take care of that." But so yeah, I don't outline. I just kind of write. I outlined a little bit for this book on what I wanted to talk about, the different weapons, the different scenarios, and different battlefield conditions, and the other dialogue with it. Do you outline, or do you just kind of go for broke?
I'm very much like you. I kind of know the beginning, I kind of know the
Mm-hmm.
end, and I let the writing process take me through it as I go along. I will
Right.
say that my books take place in 1998, so I would not consider this historical fiction, but I commiserate with you because
Hmm.
there are readers and people out there who will say, "Hey, wait a minute. They didn't have that kind of a cell phone then, or they didn't have this,
Oh
or didn't
yeah.
have that." So I really do my due diligence. There's a lot of
Mhm.
research. I research tidal charts, moon phases, current
Yes, I do the
events,
same thing.
and and the readers today are a lot more sophisticated
Yeah.
than people realize, and I think than some authors realize. And if you're doing, in your case, historical fiction, and you're talking about weaponry, there are some people out there who truly know their weaponry, and you better
Hmm.
be spot on. So I don't want to cheat the reader, and I don't want to
Right.
fool the reader. So I
Hmm.
do my absolute hardest to give them as much authenticity as I can.
Yeah, I do the same thing. If I say it's a full moon on November 11th,
It was.
1918, it was a full moon.
Yeah, yeah.
Crescent moon.
In the Cade Taylor series, they'll talk about maybe who the Miami Dolphins are playing that day, and
Yep.
when they go to a restaurant or something, they actually order entrees from that actual restaurant, not just something that's made up.
Right.
Miami is almost as big a character as any individual is in these books.
Oh yeah, I spent down there for a conference. I spent about a week down there in August, and the hotel we stayed at with some guys I worked with at the time, they didn't have a liquor license, but they had beer, and they could give it to you. They couldn't sell it because they could give it to you.
Hmm.
And about third or fourth day, came in there, we're like, "Hey, can we have a couple, a few Coronas?" They said, "You have drank us out of all our beer." Like, major accomplishment in Miami. So we
Yeah.
felt pretty good about
Yeah,
that.
my wife actually told me a story that similar situation in New Orleans happened to her at a business conference, not to her, but to her
Yeah, yeah,
clientele. And to think you could actually drink New Orleans dry, that's almost crazy and unheard of.
that
Um,
that is crazy.
yeah, but the thing about these books is, once again, there's a tremendous amount of authenticity in these books, and I try to bring some realism to it.
Hmm.
And I really want everyone to get an understanding, because Miami, like you just said, you visited Miami. Miami, like Chicago, like New York, like Los Angeles,
Hmm.
is a town that you may not live in, but it's a city you at
Hmm.
least visited.
Yeah,
So it's very incumbent upon me to make these books as accurate as I can.
yeah. I put weaponry in the book as a Browning automatic rifle. So I put it in the book, and then I said, "Huh, when would the Browning automatic rifle actually saw its first combat?" And it was the latter part of spring summer of 1918. So I had to make sure that okay, I needed to remove that then, and then introduce it later on in the book. So there's a lot of that. When did they go from the Springfield to the infield and the rifles? And because a lot of people, like I was talking to one guy, one author, and he said there's 37 rivets in a P-38, fighter, and somebody goes, no, there's actually 40. I'm like, okay,
Yeah, I mean,
all right,
those, you're never going to make everybody happy.
yeah,
Sometimes readers will point out something to you, and it may not be an inaccuracy in your book. It may just be a typo. It may
yeah,
be
exactly,
the fact that it could be something very innocuous and very small. And I've come to realize that sometimes the readers just want to be able to convey to you that they read the book, and they also
yeah,
want to have a connection with you. And I oftentimes just say to them, I hope it didn't detract from your reading experience. And
yeah,
we usually have a very
yeah.
lovely conversation after that.
Yeah, I actually had a historian read the book
Mm.
and help me when I kept okay. Why didn't we get in World War One initially? What was some of the catalysts for that? And so yeah, he helped out quite a bit, as a matter of fact. So so you got your fourth. How many's going to be in the series? Do you know? Or
It does not have a termination point.
mhm,
Um, I think I'm going to keep writing the books as long as I can produce quality material. There is a legion of Cade Taylor fans out there, and they're growing
mhm,
quite rapidly.
mhm,
They really enjoy Cade. They commiserate with Cade. My books are written in the first person, so many people feel that they're right in the car, right in the house, right in the restaurant, right in the drug deal with Cade when these events take place. So
mhm,
there's a strong immersion perspective between reader
Do you find
and
it easier to write in the first person than the second or third?
I don't know. I've only
Just 'cause-
written 4 books, and all
oh, well,
four have been in
okay.
the first person.
All
My
right. All
next
right.
book that I'm writing now is a true narrative. It's an entirely different situation, totally different. Nothing to
Mm-hmm.
do with Cade Taylor. We will see how that pans out. But right now, there's a strong following for Cade Taylor,
Right.
and he's really captured a lot of people's hearts and minds. So we'll just see. I'm never going to say no. I just could
Right.
never tell you quantitatively this is the last one. There's only 2 more. I can't say that.
It has its own life. It'll
It truly
be
does.
done when it's done.
And because it starts in 1998, we have all this forward motion to go forward with if we choose to.
Do you find that when they, when they have maybe a Scarface movie or any movies or shows that take period in that time period, that you'll see any kind of increase in sales or enthusiasm for the books? Is there anything that generates, like, a lot of people, younger folks, right? The 20s, and they don't, they may have heard about Miami in the 80s and cocaine, in the harbors floating, and, some of those cigar boats and things. But what kind of, you think, brings them to the book? Say, the 80s, that was crazy time. that was that was crazy time, especially with the Medellin and, South American and drug cartels and such. And the Mario boat lift, right? I mean, that was around that period too.
Yeah, 1980, actually, the year 1980, a lot changed in Miami with the Mario boat lift, and also with the Arthur McDuffie riots. You know, you talk to these people, and they say to them, they say, you read in the New York Times that some stagehand is retiring after 71 years, 52 years, 48 years, whatever it may
Mm-hmm.
be, on the Broadway theater, and you say, wow, you've seen every play. And he's like, yeah, because he's seen it from the backstage. He's seen
Mm-hmm.
it from behind the curtain. And in my
Mm-hmm.
case, as a longtime resident and then an actual member of the real, authentic Miami Vice,
Mm-hmm.
I see that art form from a realistic, optic.
Right.
So I'm kind of jaded, if not swayed by my own feet in reality.
Mm-hmm.
So, as a member, once again, as I mentioned, of the actual real Miami Vice unit,
Yeah.
and also living there, I see it a little differently. And I recognize there are touch points, there are ignition points for
Mm-hmm.
people. There could be Scarface, it could be Cocaine Cowboys, it could be
Mm-hmm.
Dexter, it could be anything.
Oh yeah, Dexter. Didn't even think about that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can see that.
Jeffrey did a great
Yeah.
job with Dexter.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I
So
love that thing.
all these things elicit, but the thing about Miami, and we see this a lot with Miami Vice, and we saw with the TV show Burn Notice, when when TV shows are filmed in Miami, Miami
Mm-hmm.
has a natural light that's very hard to replicate in Hollywood. And that's why we true Miamians can tell when something says they're filmed in Miami and it's not, and when
Mm-hmm.
something is actually filmed in Miami. And
Really?
like most people who are hometown loyal,
Mm-hmm.
we get very put off when we think, oh yeah, this is supposed to be a Miami story, and we see mountains in the background, or we see,
Oh, I hate that.
other things that
I
just,
hate that because that's impossible.
yeah, that just don't lend themselves to the tropical locale. So one of the things about Miami Vice was that, and I understand production, I understand how shooting
Mm-hmm.
schedules are. I've worked on TV shows, I've worked
Mm-hmm.
on film projects. One of the things we see in Miami is they'll make a left-hand turn somewhere, and then all of a sudden we know they're 18 miles away. But with Cade Taylor, when he makes a left turn, he truthfully makes a left turn on that actual street. He makes a right turn, he makes a right turn on that actual street. They are very chronologically and geographically accurate books. So
Mm-hmm.
you can, like, one of my neighbors actually reads my books with Google Maps open, and
Yep.
she actually pulls up and she looks at the street views and sees that everything I'm writing about is exactly the way it is in real life.
Yeah. So when I wrote the first book, Flames of Deception, I wanted to make it like that, right? So what I did, like when they go into Russia, you can. I mean, if you if you want to go right now, I wouldn't recommend it. By the way, not right now. That if you want to stay in the hotel, that the name of the hotel is the name of the hotel. It's on the
Right.
street, right? If you
Right.
want to go eat in the restaurant, it's right there. It's the name of the restaurant. And I looked at the menu just like you do. do you want a Beto box or whatever, Beno box? Or, what highway do they go down? And if they're going from one place in Russia to another, but have to veer off, that road you take a left on, or you take a right. So you can actually follow that if you wanted to. And the same I did with my the book after that, Cobalt in Lake Como, right? Or China in lower Upper Mongolia. I mean, you don't want people to say, okay, I get that. You went left to right. You could do that. I want to be able to immerse the reader in something that they could, oh man, I would like to go see that or whatever, right? And they could actually do it.
Yeah, I think the reader wants you to tell a compelling and entertaining story. I like to take it a step further and take them on an actual visceral journey,
Yep.
something they can visually see and
Mhm.
viscerally they can actually feel. So once again, writing in the first person and having Cade Taylor, you go to bed with him, you wake up with him. It's not like 6 days later, 5 days later. His
Yeah.
cases unfold day by day by day, and you go from start to finish with him throughout the entire ordeal.
That's like Dan Brown. All his books take place within a 24-hour period.
Yeah, mine take place within like an 8 day
Mhm.
period, 6 day
Yeah.
period. Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing. My last the book that I'm coming out, one of four, that's an 18-month, because I June 1917 to October 1918. So I put it's a diary of a soldier, unknown soldier,
Okay.
basically read through from a father and son.
Hmm.
Um, and I want to make it as truthful as possible. So what's this other thing you're working on? So,
It's really in its infancy. All I can really say, because I don't, not that I'm being very coy or holding
mm,
cards to my chest. It just really is still in development. It's only like 3 or 4 chapters in. It's about a guy in Los Angeles, and he's dealing with, although it happened earlier in his life, he's still dealing with the loss of his wife
mm-hmm,
and still trying to hold it together. And he kind of comes across a very, I don't want to say paranormal. I'll just say a very uh, crazy situation. It's very M. Night Shyamalan type of thing. So,
okay, excellent. And then are you working on your, I guess, fifth for the series? Are you doing tandem projects? Can you do that? I do that sometimes. I work
I,
on two or
I
three
I don't
things.
do tandem only because I don't know if I have the skill set for it.
Mm.
The latest Cade Taylor
Oh, I probably
novel,
don't.
the latest Cade Taylor novel titled Choices and Chances came out February 9th. It came out about 2 weeks ago.
Oh, nice.
So, I'm
Congratulations.
still in promotion with that book, and I'm still, working with that aspect of it. But in the same respect, I'm starting to already, move towards this story in Los Angeles.
So who's your publisher? Do you self-publish or you have a publisher? Or how do
I
you do
work
it?
with a multimedia company called Beate Bellicosi, which is Latin for Blessed are the Warriors, something you might be able to relate to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, they're doing quite well. So I work with them.
Excellent. Do they have other authors? Or it's a multimedia company. It sounds like they probably do more than just books.
They've done some stuff in film, and they're
Mm-hmm.
kind of dabbling in podcasts. I really don't have the full litany of what they do, but that's what I'm working with.
Excellent. So so what do you do in your free time? I mean, evidently, because you tell your wife you have to work, so that means you do have free time when she says, no, you're not going to write. We're going to do something.
It varies. I mean,
Yeah.
there's we live in a part of Florida that we try to enjoy as much as we can, and
Mm-hmm.
there's just like when you watch television and movies, they oftentimes show a sculpturist or an author or a painter living in a beautiful seaside home in Maine or Carmel,
Mm-hmm.
California. No,
That's not the case.
I have real life things. I have to go to the supermarket. I have to do things, and so my
Yeah.
life is consumed with what people would consider to be mundane and trivial, and then other people consider it to be rather high speed. It's just a day in the life.
Yeah. I retired about a year and a half ago, I think, or something like that, but 1 August. And I got bored. So I started working at the school here as a monitor on a special education bus. It's like 5 hours a day, but I get a break of 5 hours. So that allows me to write. But in the summertime, I like to, go work out and go sit by the pool if it's not 1,000 degrees outside. and write, because my mind has to be fresh. Later in the day, I'm like, oh my God, I can't, I don't even want to read anything, more or less write anything. So I'm a morning person writer, definitely in the summer or any kind of time we have a break. But I don't sit down and write 8 hours. I'll do a couple hours, and then go do something else, maybe come back and do something. But I got to keep, because that's the way I worked, when I got out of the Army, and how I work. Just balls to the walls, go back, relax, and then do it again. Kind of,
Well,
I guess, a cycle.
the formula that's kind of worked for me in the past is I try, and I want to emphasize the word try. I try to do 5 pages a day, and it
About a
sounds like,
thousand words.
I guess so. It sounds like a lot to some people. It sounds like a
Mm-hmm.
few to others. But when you start to do the math, 5 pages a day is 150 pages in a month. And with my books and in my genre, there's a certain formula that works. If you
Mm-hmm.
kick out your fictional novel at 250 pages, the reader oftentimes feels cheated. If you come in around 385, the reader feels like this is really getting to be too much. So you have to hit that sweet spot between, 310 and 322 or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I start to get to the back end of the book, I start to have a conscious effort of word count, page count, and I start to recognize, what do I need to do
Mm-hmm.
to extend this, tighten it up, bring it together, and everything else.
Yeah. I did a lot of research. I didn't know anything about writing. I only started writing 2 years ago. So I didn't know anything. So I did, okay, how many pages or word count is a novel? They go, okay, anything from, 60 to 100, anything over 100,000, maybe, gets a little long. Maybe that becomes a fantasy or whatever book, right? And then the military history or fictional, historical fiction, how big are those? This fell a little under it, probably because I didn't want to draw it out too much where I'm repeating myself in the book over and over. That's the one thing you don't want to do, right?
Right.
So I kind of a little short, but it's, it gets to, but I try to do 1,000 words a day, whatever page counts that is. If I don't, then I'm not going to, go, ape shit or anything. I'll be okay with it.
Well, I think it's just the two of us talking here, but I think if we were in a panel and there were 8 of us talking,
Mm.
I think we would all be kind of speaking the same language, just with different variations. It's kind of like a
Yes.
golf swing or the way you wash a car or the way you do anything. Everyone has their own style,
Mm-hmm.
but in the
Yeah.
end, your objective is the same, to get that
Yes.
task done in a certain way.
But I learn every time I talk to an author. I learn. I'm like, it's a good idea. So I try to incorporate those nuggets of information to make me a better writer and have it. Because one thing I want to take the reader on a journey, but it's entertainment, and I want them to be entertained.
Yeah, the thing that I've found in the writing community is that there really, personally, there isn't any room for jealousy or envy. Everyone has
No.
their own path. And there
Yep.
are certain people you will talk to in your podcast who are going to just zoom to the top and they're going to be
Mm-hmm.
awesome and fantastic and very big commercial success. And then
Yep.
there's other people who are going to sell just a few books, but if they're happy and they're doing what they enjoy and the people who
Yep.
do read their books are happy, then it's a win. So
Yep.
I don't really have any feelings of envy or jealousy or anything else. And I think we can all learn from each
Yep.
other. No
Yeah.
one has the corner on how anything should be done in this art form. And this is what it is. It is an art form. You're taking
Mm-hmm.
something from your mind, transposing it to your fingertips, and then it's getting printed. So other
Right.
people can now hold it and read it and look into it.
Yeah.
So it is a sense of an art form.
Yeah. You make a good point. I haven't met anybody. I mean, I've talked to some very established writers and some that aren't, and you know. But what I found is everybody wants to help each other. Like if I send something to somebody, say, "Hey, can you read this for me?" They'll read it and come back. Give me some feedback, or maybe I'll read theirs, or I'll ask them for some advice, especially for marketing. Right, marketing is the hardest part to me of writing a book is trying to have people buy it. Um, so I think getting all that advice, but I'm not competing with you, right? You're not competing with me. Somebody just doesn't read one book a year. People people are read multiple books a year. So
Well,
multiple people can be successful.
well, the marketing of your books or my books or anyone else's books is a very dicey situation because the landscape is changing dramatically. Um,
Yes.
we've seen the advent of self-publishing. We've seen the advent of e-readers. We've seen the advent
Mm-hmm.
of a lot of things. And you have to kind of learn to embrace all of those platforms and all of those avenues.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to stay with one. You don't have to take them all, but you have to
Yep.
find your niche and find your spot that works for you. You're
Mm-hmm.
right. We're not competing with each other. I don't normally send any of my stuff out for review with
Mm-hmm.
other authors and such, not because I don't think there's any benefit to it,
Mm-hmm.
but the topics I write about, very few people have actually physically done.
Yeah.
So I kind of stick into my circle on that one. I have a
Mm-hmm.
long-term friend and mentor of 20 plus years that I've worked with on other situations, and
Mm-hmm.
he has got some published works, and I will talk with him from time to time. But for the most part, um, I kind of write it. It goes through the editing
Mm-hmm.
process, and then sometimes my wife reads it before it goes out, and sometimes she gets it in its completed form.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I did that for my first two. This third, this historical fiction is a little different for me from doing it. So, what about the people that you worked with? Have you got like what the feedback from them, or do they know you're writing? I'm assuming they know you're writing. Have they came back with anything? Say, oh man, yeah, Michael, that's pretty cool. Yeah, what's their feedback you've been, the folks that you work with?
Um, I haven't really gotten a lot of feedback from the men and women I work directly with in these task forces and in these
Mm-hmm.
drug situations. I think they're aware I'm writing. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think they look at it as any type of pulling back the veneer or revealing the trade secrets or exposing the magician. I don't think they look at it anything like
Right.
that. For many people who read my books, many of them either lived, still live, or want to live in Miami, Florida. And my books seem to elicit a synapses in their brain because it's a time frame that's now coming close to 30 years
Mm-hmm.
ago.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's also waxes nostalgia with some of them. But they remember these places that Cade is maneuvering his way through, and
Mm-hmm.
they seem to like it. I think it brings back some sort of serotonin or synapses with them sometimes.
80s weren't bad. I mean, 80s
No,
weren't bad compared to now. 80s were pretty nice, to be honest
well,
with
I,
you.
I think we always look back at our lives and
Yeah.
say that it was the good old days.
Yep.
But the reality of it is many of us don't realize that you're where you are because of the choices you made, and also you're where you
Mm-hmm.
are because this is exactly where you wanted to be.
Yeah.
And
There's a thing in the army that, you're with. I was an enlisted, right? I didn't go to college, but I'm with the lieutenant, right? 4 years, West Point, finest schools. We're in the middle of mud, cold. Look at him and go, we're in exactly the same
yeah,
place.
yeah.
And we have two different paths to get there, but we're in the same place right now.
A lot of times when I've taught and lectured at financial institutions or our law enforcement agencies, I start off my presentation with, I was raised with drug traffickers and money launderers, and sometimes the road a man chooses to avoid his destiny, he finds on that very same road.
Right.
We think we have control. We think we have some sort of magical, GPS in our lives that we run our
Mm.
lives. And truth be told, like Al Pacino said in the movie Devil's Advocate, you want to make me laugh? Tell me about your plans. Uh, we really don't know where we're going to end up. We just have to make the best of where we are.
Every day. Yep. Yep. Have something to work towards and see if you get it, but make sure that you always have plan B and C and an
Hmm.
off ramp.
Yeah. Well,
That's
I
always
think
good.
the writing also gives people like yourself and I a sense of purpose now. I mean,
Yeah.
when you do a bunch of high speed stuff like you did and I did in the
Mm.
previous life, it's very hard. You can't always stay at that pace forever.
Right.
You just don't have it.
No.
You just can't physically do it. You can't emotionally do it. You can't
Yep.
mentally do it. So to be able to impart those experiences and this wisdom now in this art form is a good thing.
I enjoy it. I never thought I would. I mean, ever in my entire life, ever. And I just had an idea one day. I ran it through my old platoon leader, and then the mistake that I made, and I don't regret it, but I told somebody, folks, I was going to write a book, and they were like, "Well, you're not going to write a book." I'm like, well, "All right, now game on. I'm going to write a book." And then, sure enough, I wrote a book. Then I had another idea for another one. Then I had another idea for another one. So now it just feels, again, it's really rewarding. I mean, I learn a tremendous amount by just doing the research and writing.
Well, I've worked on a few TV shows and a few movies, and if you sit through the credits, you'll see hundreds of names scroll by. But when you write a book, it is your name on the
Yeah.
spine of that book and your name
Yep.
alone. So
Yep.
you are out there, you are exposed, and you are
Oh,
vulnerable,
you put
and
yourself out there.
you put yourself out there for, acceptance or rejection.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
but the one thing that can't be taken away from you is this is your product. This is you. And
That's
eventually it
right.
may even become your brand.
Yeah. Exactly. You're right. You got to have a brand. That's critical in authoring and stuff. Well, Michael, it's been a pleasure talking to you today. Again, somebody from Miami that was born in Miami, so and still lives there. So again, that's quite remarkable in itself, I think. I don't know how many there are. It's like Texas. Well, no, I have 3 kids. They're all born in Texas. I wasn't. My wife is German. She definitely wasn't. But I'm from Texas, right? And I've lived here so long, but I love it. But it's fine to meet folks that I'm from here and I still live here and I've lived here my entire life.
Yeah. Makes you the longevity of historian and everything all rolled into one. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, folks, go out and check. What's the title of the books again?
The main character is Cade Taylor. The very first book is called Trust No One. The second book was called Grasp and Smoke. The third book was called One More Move. And the fourth book in the series that currently is Choices and Chances.
Excellent. Well, folks, go out there on Amazon. I'm assuming they're Amazon,
They are. You can find
Barnes
it
and Noble,
under
Books a
my
Million,
name.
wherever.
Yeah. They're all there.
Pick them
Everything.
up. So
You
pick them up.
name it, any book retailer in the world has them. So
Excellent. Excellent. Well, again, Michael, thank you very much for being on Author Rec,
thank you.
and thanks for what you've done, because there's probably a lot of people live saying thank you. At least you stopped some of that traffic.
Likewise. Thank you too, Travis, for having me.
Yes, sir.